Okay, good Tavach, everyone. We're sponsored by Shalom Fogel. We're sponsored for Great Shidduch for Batya Basara. We're sponsored by Ed Salah from London, and we're sponsored by, co-sponsored by Eddie Chazan. We're holding on the bottom of Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis. The bottom of Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis. The Gemara says, "My time of the Rabbanon." What's the reason of the Rabbanon that they hold that the oil, the mincha, the yitzika, can be done by a non-kohen? So the Gemara says, Amakra, the pasuk says, "V'yatzak alei Hashem," and you pour oil, v'nasan olei levayna, and put on frankincense, then v'heviya el b'nei Aaron ha'kohanim, then bring it to the kohanim v'kamatz. So only mikmitza ve'elech mitzvahs kohuna. Only from the kmitza and onward is the mitzvah of kohuna, but before that, which is the pouring of the oil, that can be done by a zar. It could even be done by Mark. Says the Gemara, Limeid al Yitziko Belila, this teaches us about the pouring and the kneading, sheksher bazar. Now Rabbi Shimon says that the Yitzika needs a kohen. How does Rabbi Shimon know that? So the Gemara makes a suggestion which it will refute. Rabbi Shimon, he holds that when it says B'nei Aaron HaKohanim, the B'nei Aaron HaKohen is nidrash lefanav ula acharav. He holds B'nei Aaron HaKohanim mikra nidrash lefanav ula acharav. The B'nei Aaron HaKohen go to the before and to the after. And therefore it covers both the Yitzika and Belila and the Kamatz. Says Gemara, that can't be. The Sabar Rab Shimon mikra nidrash lefanav ula acharav. Does Rab Shimon hold that a pasuk is darshan before and after? Vatanya, it says by the blood of the chatis, the kohen takes from the blood of the chatis with his finger, and he puts it on the corners of the mizbech. Now the Rabbanan hold that the taking of the blood, the Kabbalah, and also the putting it on the corner has to be done with the right hand. With his finger he should take. Malamed shaloi take Kabbalah elabiyamin. That the taking the blood has to be with the right. Remember we said kol makam shama be'etzba eina elayamin. V'nosan, and put it on the horn. Malamed shaloi take nesina elabiyamin. That's the opinion of the Rabbanan, that the placement also has to be yamin. Rabbi Shimon says no. It's clear that Rabbi Shimon doesn't say, when he says yad, it means etzba. Does it say etzba with the taking the blood with the finger? So obviously he holds that the mikra is not nidrash lefanav. Yad b'Kabbalah, since it doesn't say the taking of the blood, it doesn't say etzba, kibel b'smel, if he takes it with his left hand, it's kosher. V'amar Abaya b'mikra nidrash lefanav v'la'achrav kamifligi. Reb Shimon holds that the etzba doesn't go on the Kabbalah before. Reb Shimon savar la'acharav nidrash, it's only darshan afterwards on the placing of the blood, lefanav ein nidrash. So that can't be the reason of Reb Shimon that he holds that the yitzika has to be with a kohen, because he holds mikra nidrash lefanav, because here you see he holds clearly that mikra nidrash la'acharav. Rather, elahainu time with Reb Shimon, I'll tell you the reason of Reb Shimon. V'havia, it says, and he brings it to the Kohanim, and it says it with a vav. And we say vav moisif al inyan rishon. So not only is the kmitza need a kohen, but it connects it to the yitzika, which is mentioned before, vav moisif al inyan rishon. So now the Gemara asks about that. Asks the Gemara, "V'savar Rabbi Shimon vav ma'asav al inyan rishon?" Does Rabbi Shimon hold vav ma'asav al inyan rishon? If that's the case, then we're going to have a problem. Why you don't need a kohen for the shchita? Elamiata dichsiv v'shachar es ben habakar v'krivu b'nei Aaron hakam es hadam, and the kohanim accept the blood v'zarku es hadam, and they sprinkle the blood. If he holds v'hikriva vav ma'asav al inyan rishon, then we know Mikabala ve'elach mitzvahs kuna. Only from the Kabbalah catching the blood and on, you need a kain. Malamed al shchita sheksher bizarre. But if Reb Shimon holds vav ma'asav alin rishon, either Reb Shimon vav ma'asav alin rishon shows shchita nami hakanami bizarre te psula, so it should connect it to the Kabbalah and the zrika, and shchita should also be possible with a zar. Says Gemara, no, that's different. Shani hasam damakra. The pasuk juxtaposes the smicha to the shchita. V'samach v'shachat. Ma smicha bezarim, just like the smicha, the leaning on the animal, with all your might, is kosher bizar, and adrab, it has to be done by the owner. Af shchita bezarim, says the Gemara, then we should say that the owner has to do the shchita. Ima smicha bebalim, just like smicha is with the owner, so we should say also that the shchita needs the owner, which of course we know that shchita that doesn't have to be done with the owner. Ima smicha bebalim af shchita bebalim, says Gemara, hahu loy matzah samrik. You can't say that. Kal v'chaimer, umaz rika, which is more important, it's a mechaper, the ikar kapara. Ki adam hu anefesh, it's the ikar kapara. Loy boi balim, it doesn't need the owner. Shchita, the lav ikar kapara, shchita, which is not the ikar kapara, loy kol shchein, that it doesn't need the owner. So you'll say, v'chi tema ain't done in efsher mishi efsher. We don't learn out what's possible. The shchita could mandate the owner, but Kabbalah can't mandate the owner because it needs a kain. So maybe we would say that you don't learn out efsher mishi efsher, but we know it doesn't need to be done by a kain, but it doesn't need to be done by the owner, because on Yom Kippur it says Aaron has to do, the Kohen Gadol has to do the animal. Gali Rachmana b'yom HaKippurim v'shachar as parachatas asheloi. Oh, only over there he has to do the shchita of the carbon that's his. Malamed nechlal the shchita ba'alma normally loy ba'inam ba'alam. It doesn't need a ba'al. So be'emesin is Reb Shimon holds vav ma'asav alin yirishin. The fact that shchita is kosher bizarre we know from the drushes that we just said. Now we start a new sugya. We know, I've told you that there are code words to tell you that something is indispensable. So now we have a major Gemara about what is indispensable. Amarav, Kol Mokem Shenemar Torah v'Chuka. Wherever it says the code word Torah or Chuka, right, a statute, Einei Ela La'akev, then these matters are indispensable. If you don't do them, it's ruined. These are matters of absolute indispensability. They're essential. Now, Kosel Kedaitach, at this point the Gemara says maybe that it's only going to be indispensable if it says both Torah and Chukah. Kosel Kedaitach Tarte Boy, like in the pasuk K'dichsev Zayis Chukah Satayra. However, the Gemara says that can't be. Varei Nazir Deloik Siv Be'el Torah says Zayis Torah Sanazir, and yet Nazir is indispensable a lot of things. V'amarav Tnufa B'Nazir Me'akfa, the waving of the Nazir is indispensable. Says the Gemara, well, that's different because Shani Hassan Kevin Dechsiv Kain Yasa, besides saying Torah, it says at the end Kain Yasa, so you should do, which is repetitious. So that's like saying Torah in Chukah. Command Dechsiva B'Chukah Dami. It's like besides Torah, it also says Chukah. Says the Gemara Hari Toida, the Thanksgiving offering. The like Siva Be'al Torah. It doesn't say. It doesn't say Chukah. It only says Torah. The like Siva Be'al Torah. Usanan Arba Shebesaida. Remember we said there's 4 different varieties of 10 loaves. Arba Shebetoida Ma'akvin Zeh. You need to have all 4. Says Gemara Shani Toida the Iskish L'Nazir. Because we already said that Nazir is indispensable, and Toida is juxtaposed to Nazir. T'chsiv al Zevach Toida Shlamav. The sacrifice of Toida Shlamav, and the word Shlamav comes to include Nazir. Shlamav l'Rabba, Shlamav l'Rabba Shalmei Nazir. So here we see Nazir is juxtaposed to the Toida. So just like the Nazir is indispensable, so there are features by the Taida that are also indispensable. Says Gemara V'Hari Mitzayra, the like Siv Be'ela Taira. It doesn't say Chukah, and yet we know Snan Arba Minim Sheba Mitzayra, the 4 species of Mitzayra, which are the 2 birds, the cedar, the scarlet thread, and the hyssop. Ma'akvin Zeh, they're indispensable one for another. Says the Gemara, Shani Hasam Kevin D'Chsiv Zois Tia Teres Mitzayra. Remember we said Tia is also a code word. Tia means Bav Yosai Tehei. So since it says Torah and Tia, it's command D'Chsiv Bei Chukah Dami. It's like it says Chukah. Says the Gemara V'Hari Yom HaKippurim on Yom Kippur D'Loi Ksiv Bei Ela Chukah. It doesn't say Torah. It only says Chukah. Usnan Shnei Sira Yom HaKippurim Ma'akvin Zeh. The 2 he-goats of Yom Kippur, the Sa'al Hashem and the Sa'al Azazel, are indispensable one for the other. Ella, finally, the Gemara capitulates and says you don't need both. It's one or the other. Ella o Torah o Chukah. Says Gemara, but that can't be. Barishar Karbanas D'Chsibu Torah. Other Karbanas where it says Torah, and a lot of the details of other Karbanas, V'loi Ma'akveh, they're not essential. So the Gemara says, you're right. Torah alone is not enough. Torah by Chukah. If it says Torah, it needs to say Chukah. But the Chukah loy by Torah. But if it says Chukah, it doesn't have to say Torah. So the Gemara says, but then why does it say Torah v'Chukah? It should just say Chukah, since Torah alone is not good enough anyway. But Torah v'Chukah Kamar says the Gemara, no, this is what it means. Hachi Kamar. Afal Gav D'Chsiv Torah, even though it says Torah, Iksiva Chukah in, it's indispensable if it says Chukah, v'ilai ilai, but if not, not. Says the Gemara, but what about Mincha? Vari Mincha, this is why it gets into our Masechta, because of the Menachos connection. Vari Mincha, D'Chsiv ba Chukah, it says Chukah, V'amarav, by a mincha, the only thing that's indispensable is where it's repeated. Wherever the pasuk repeats itself by mincha, there it's indispensable. But only hichzer in, only if it repeats itself, lo hichzer lai. But why? It says chukah. Says the Gemara, Shani Hasam, it's different over there. The ksiva chukah achila ksiva. It doesn't say the chukah on the procedures. It says chukah only on the eating. So that it's not enough to make the procedures essential. Says Gemara, B'Hari Lechem Aponim, the showbread, the chiksiv chukah achila ksiva. It says about the eating. Usnan, and yet, even though it only says chukah by the eating, yet a lot by the lechem aponim is indispensable. Usnan shnei sedarim akvin zeh. The 2 rows of challah are indispensable one for another. Shnei bezichen makvin zeh. The 2 spoonfuls of levina are essential. Hasdarim bezichen makvin zeh. And rows without the spoonfuls or vice versa is indispensable. Ella kolecha d'chsiva achila, where it says chukan achila, akula milsa ksiva, goes on everything. So then the kasha is, it says by mincha chukah. So then why does it have to say that only where it's doubled? Says Gemara Shani Hasam, it's different by a mincha. The Amakra, because the pasuk says migirsa umishamna, from her flour and her oil. Now it could have just said migeres umishemen, from flour and oil. By saying migirsa umishamna, its flour and its oil, that comes to teach me that geres umincha ma'akfin, only the flour and the oil are indispensable. Ve'ein davar achar ma'akiv, nothing else is indispensable unless the pasuk repeats it. Gufa, Amarav, kol makam she'irzu l'kachasav b'teres mincha, wherever the pasuk repeats itself by mincha, ein ela li'akiv. U'shmuel amir, and Shmuel says, geres v'shemen ma'akiv, only the flour and the oil is ma'akiv, ve'ein davar achar ma'akiv. So Gemara says, does Shmuel hold that where the pasuk repeats it, it's not ma'akiv. L'shmuel afal gav the tanabe kraloi ma'akvele. Even if the pasuk repeats it, it's not ma'akiv. Says the Gemara, even Shmuel agrees. It certainly is indispensable. Here, the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel revolves around an interesting halacha. You know, the kmitza is a very hard thing to do. He's putting in the 3 fingers, getting the exact amount, leveling it with the pinky and the thumb. This is all very hard to do. So there are those that hold you could make a measuring vessel that holds the amount of a kmitza. So the Gemara says, it repeats the handful bekumtzai, with his handful kamiflagi. The Tanya maloi kumtzai should scoop up a full kaimitz, and then it says bekumtzai, and then it says with his handful. So we learn out shelo yasa mida lekaimitz. You shouldn't make a measuring vessel the size of the handful. Now the question is, if you do, is it ma'akiv? Rav Savar Hanami Tami Bakra. This is also repeated by the pasuk, and it's ma'akiv. Why? The Aaron brought the mincha v'yamale kapo mimena, and he filled his palm with it. So it repeats again with his palm. So it has to be without a measuring vessel. While the Shmuel says that pasuk is said by the inauguration, which is not the Doros. And therefore, since it was only repeated at the one-time thing during the inauguration, that's not considered a repeat. Shmuel, Doros, Mishalo, Yalfino. We don't learn out for generations from a pasuk that was said at a one-time deal. Says Gemara, V'lo Yalev Shmuel, Doros, Misha. Does Shmuel not learn out generations, Misha, from what happens at one time? Remember we said that even though liquid vessels are not Mekadesh dry, and dry vessels are not Mekadesh liquid, but we said that's only measuring vessels. But the basins are Mekadesh even dry. Why? Because it says, by the presence of the Nesiim, it says, Shneim Malayim Silas, basins filled with fine flour. So you see, basins are Mekadesh dry. And that's Shmuel's drasha, even though the Matanas of Nesiim is only a one-time thing. V'lo Yalav Shmuel Doros Misha, he doesn't learn for all time from a one-time thing. But Tanan, Klei Alach Mekachin Esalach, liquid vessels are Mekadesh liquid. Umidas Yavish Mekachin Yavish, and dry vessels are Mekadesh dry. The Klei Alach Mekachin Yavish, liquid cannot be Mekadesh dry. V'lo Midas Yavish Mekachin Esalach, nor can dry be Mekadesh liquid. V'amar Shmuel, this is only restricted to measuring vessels. But the basins, mekachin. Why? It says by the gifts of Nesiim, Shnei Malayim Silas, the 2 silver bowls full with fine flour. So you see, bowls could be mekadesh flour. Says the Gemara, Shani Hasam, it's different over there. No, that's different. Because there we're talking about the Nesiim, which is repeated 12 times. Because it says it by all the Nesiim. Shani Hasam, the Tani Bakra traces Zimnan. It says it 12 times, and therefore, since it says it 12 times, we could learn it out, even though it's L'Shah, it's only a one-time thing. Amr le Rav Kahana v'Ravasi l'Rav. So Rav Kahana Ravasi said to Rav, you're saying wherever the pasuk repeats something, it's ma'akiv. Vari Hagasha, bringing it to the southwest corner, the Tani Bakra, the pasuk repeats it, and v'loy ma'akva, it's not indispensable, because we learned in our Mishnah that if lo yigash, if you didn't bring it, it's not ma'akiv. Says the Gemara, man tonabe, where is Hagasha repeated? Hagasha is repeated Do we have 35 people here? Wow. That's amazing. I'm glad my hotspot is carrying us. For some reason, I think there's very bad weather over here, but for some reason, my internet in the unit is not working. But I'm running this from the hotspot of my phone. Says the Gemara, Man Tonabe, where does it repeat itself by Hagasha? This is the law of the Mincha. Hakrei v'yisa b'nei Aaron l'fnei Hashem. The b'nei Aaron should offer it l'fnei Hashem. So that's Hagasha. And it also says in the pasuk, the Pnei HaMizbeach, to bring it to the Pnei HaMizbeach. Says the Gemara, no, there it's not repeated to tell us it's essential. There it's to give us the precise location where you have to bring the mincha and touch the Mizbeach. That's to give us a precise location. The Tanya, it says Lefnei Hashem, before Hashem. Now before Hashem is on the west, because the Beis Hamikdash is to the west. So the Tanya, Lefnei Hashem, Yochel B'Marav, I might think we should touch the western side of the Mizbeach. Talmud Leimer El Pnei HaMizbeach, it says to the face of the Mizbeach. The face of the Mizbeach is the south, because the ramp is on the south. El Pnei HaMizbeach, if it said El Pnei HaMizbeach, Yochel B'Darim, I would think that you should touch the south. Talmud Leimer Lefnei Hashem, which is the west. That's why we say we touch the southwest corner. Okay, tzad magisha b'karen draimis maravas. You touch the southwestern corner, keneged chudah shel karen, against the edge of the horn, and that's the fulfillment of Hagasha. Rebbe Eliezer disagrees. Let me tell you Rebbe Eliezer outside. Rebbe Eliezer holds, Rebbe Eliezer is of the opinion that the Mizbeach was all to the north. So that means that the southern side, of the Mizbeach is facing the door of the Heichel. It's facing the west. So, Amarta, Rebbe Eliezer says, Kol mokum shata moitzei shtei mikrois, where you find two psukim. Echad mekayim atzmai umekayim chavei. One could fit with what it says and what the other one says. The echad mekayim atzmai, and one works with itself, but umevatel es chaver, it negates the other. Manichin eshe mekayim atzmai umevatel chaver. We forsake the one that only works for itself and negates its companion. V'soifsin, and we grab hold of eshe mekayim atzmai mekayim chaver, that which works for both psukim. So when you say before Hashem in the west, that's obviously not the south. That's not the south. But when you say you should do it in the south, that works also l'fnei Hashem. Kiyamto l'fnei Hashem, it works l'fnei Hashem, because the south, if the Mizbeach is all the way on the north, the south faces the door. Where does that happen? This Tana holds Kula Mizbeach, but Safenkeit, the whole Mizbeach is on the north. Okay, we already got a daf in the books over here, Rabbi Isai. Am I coming through, everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, that's a gift from Hashem, running on the hotspot of my phone.